What's happening? A good Monday to all of you. Thanks for joining us as always. It is much, much appreciated. Our only show of the week. For the rest of the week, we are kicked off due to A's baseball, so we have a lot to get to in a short amount of time. We start where you think we would start. The NBA Finals Game 2 last night. Warriors took care of business. You know, last week I said this on Friday. I expected the Warriors to punch back. I expected them to win last night. I even told Chris in the office last week I would not be surprised if the Warriors smoked the Celtics in Game 2. So I was not surprised that Golden State won last night. I thought they were very, very physical. Compared to Game 1, much more physicality from Golden State last night, especially on the defensive end. I also thought when you watch them defensively, they aggressively doubled from time to time, right? They went after Tatum. They went after Jaylen Brown. They were very aggressive. They pressured the basketball. They tried to take away some space. And you saw that intensity. You saw that physicality. It was on a different level from Golden State versus Game 1. It's almost like the Warriors were looking at the Celtics in Game 1 saying, oh, wait a minute. Fourth quarter, they punched us in the neck, and we could not react to it, because we were not used to that physicality and that intensity after playing against a team like Dallas. Boston is different. We have to adjust. They adjusted. Props to them. And you could really tell from the first play of this game, it was going to be different. Celtics win the jump ball. Al Horford catches it at the top of the break, and Draymond Green takes away Horford's space and grabs onto the basketball for a jump ball. An incredibly aggressive start for that Warriors defense. There was no doubt that Green was setting the tone for the rest of his team. If we want to win this game, if we want to send a message, this is the way we have to play. And then the Warriors offense took over in the second half. Third quarter, Steph Curry got hot. Third quarter, Jordan Poole got hot. Those two guys are shooting well. It's going to be a very long day at the office for the Celtics, and both of them got going in that third quarter. Now, how did they get going? Two ways. Curry off the pick and roll. Celtics had a very tough time defending the pick and roll for a number of reasons. I'll get into one of them a little bit later. But the Celtics had a very difficult time defending the pick and roll with Curry, and Curry killed them. The other way that the offense got going for the Warriors, number one, good defense usually lands to good offense, right? When you look at defending a team, coming up with stops, and getting down the other end of the floor, you score easier. Things are made easier. And I thought when you watched this game, you saw transitionally, the Warriors made an impact. Celtics had a very difficult time slowing down the Warriors in transition, whether that was off of a miss and running fast, or it was off of a turnover, which the Celtics had way too many of. They turned that defense into offense, and it led them to some easier looks. It got Jordan Poole going. So that transition offense for Golden State was very, very difficult for the Celtics to handle. And as we talked about with the Celtics, you turn the basketball over, you get in trouble. That's been the one common thread of this team throughout the postseason. When they turn the basketball over more than 16 times, they lose. Simple. That's how it's worked. And they had, 18 turnovers yesterday? Turn the ball over, you get in trouble. The Warriors had 35, 40 points off of turnovers, which is just an ungodly number. Celtics need to make this a half-court battle. They can figure out the pick and roll, but they can't figure out giving Golden State easy points off of sloppy turnovers and bad missed shots. So it was the combination of the pick and roll and getting into transition which helped Golden State's offense. Here was the Celtics head coach Ime Udoka in the postgame.
I mean, that's one player that, he can only do or guard one person at a time. So we had 11 turnovers for 18 points in the first half. They had 9 steals, so playing in the crowd way too much. I mean, he's going to switch matchups a lot of times and try to impact the ball defensively especially, but we weren't strong with the ball overall, so it wasn't just him. It was, of course, he's going to come out and try to set the tone, but I think we weren't strong with the ball a lot, searching for fouls instead of going up and making plays, especially with their lack of rim protection. So for us, that was a little disappointing to give up 33 points off of 19 turnovers, and that's kind of been a constant theme in the playoffs. When that happens, we're in trouble.
Nick Cattle Show. There was one team that played with urgency. There was one team that did not play with the same urgency. The Warriors from the jump played with urgency. It's as simple as that. They knew what was at hand. Like if they lost that game last night, they knew it'd be incredibly difficult to win that series. Simple, right? I mean, if you go down 0-2, you lose 2 home games, you got to look and turn around and say, okay, now we've got to win, 4 out of the next 5? Can we beat this team 4 out of 5? So they played with the urgency. Now let's get to the other part of the game. I gave respect to the Warriors, their offense, how they played well defensively. Give them credit. Now let's talk about the officiating crew, because I give them 0 credit. They stunk last night. They stunk out loud. It was one-way traffic. And you cannot watch that game last night and tell me that it was not officiated differently for one team than the other. You just can't. When you're watching the Warriors play defense last night, they were allowed to be very physical and very handsy. The Celtics were not allowed the same latitude. And you're watching Draymond Green do whatever he wants to do. And if you allow, again, the only way the Celtics are going to win this series is if they are allowed to be physical and handsy on defense, if they're allowed to take space away from the shooters of the Warriors. And when you watched how that game was called last night, the Celtics were not given, again, that latitude to be physical, to be handsy, to take the space away. If you watch Draymond Green defensively last night, look, Dre's a very good defensive player. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't think he needs help. But if you watch last night, watch Draymond Green off the ball. Almost every single possession, he's grabbing, he's pushing, he's hitting, he's slapping. He was mugging guys off of the ball. And so if you're going to allow that, I have no problem. No problem with a crew allowing that, as long as you allow it for both teams. And that wasn't the case last night, especially in the first quarter. You got to be kidding me with some of those calls in the first quarter. They were a joke. The phantom foul on Jaylen Brown when Gary Payton's going up for a layup. Didn't touch him. Second foul, they sit Brown down. Tatum and Draymond going back and forth during an inbounds pass, right? Ref walks up to him. All right, guys, let's split this up. Let's calm down a little bit. Green immediately flops. The most predictable flop in the history of basketball. Foul on Tatum. Terrible call. How about the play when actually a tackle happened? Like you saw Draymond Green tackle Grant Williams at the free throw line, and they called the foul on Grant Williams. Again, if you're going to allow the physicality, I have no issue with it if you let it go both ways. One-way traffic is not what I want to see in an NBA Finals. Kings fans, you know all about one-way traffic in a Finals game. And that's what you saw last night. First quarter, third quarter especially. The crew was bad. There's no way that you can watch that game and say that it was called the same for each team, especially in those 2 quarters. It was awful. Now, does that mean the Celtics should have lost? Should they have lost the way they did? No. What happened, at least in this man's humble opinion, what happened was the officiating started to get in the head of the Celtics, and they lost poise. They had 0 poise, and in the second half, they collapsed. They fell apart. They ran to the corner with their tail tucked between their legs and said, we're not getting the calls. We're not allowed to play physical. They're bumping us around, so we're going to give in. 0 poise, 0 fight in the second half. That's on the Celtics. That's not on the crew. Here's Jason Tatum in the postgame.
It's just kind of as simple as just we got to just take care of the ball. We've done it, and we're a really good team when we take care of the ball. But we have those laps where we, snowball effect, where we pile on turnovers and dig ourselves into a hole.
Lost their poise, got sloppy, turned the ball over. I mean, they looked like a team by midway of the third quarter that tapped out. They got down 17, that thing was over. I mean, technically, they got down by 10 in the third, it was over. Tapped out. And a big issue for the Celtics, and if this continues, this series will not go 7 games. No way. Third quarters. You look at the first 2 quarters in this series. The Celtics have been outscored 73-38. It's comical. And they knew that was an issue. Going into last night's game, they knew that the third quarter was a problem for them, and they still went out there and played like crap in the third quarter. That's inexcusable. You deserve to lose that game. 73-38, the first 2 third quarters of this series? What? Here was Steph Curry on the third quarter.
Well, our third was basically the same as game 1. We just got off to a better start defensively where we left an imprint on the game, and they felt us a little bit more than they did. So the other guys didn't get off as much. it's a tough task. Like I said, those two guys create a lot for them. But if you can contain the other guys and just try to make it difficult, that carries over to the rest of the game. And our third quarter was great, and we got enough separation that the fourth quarter is a little bit easier tonight.
You heard my thoughts. I want your thoughts. 916-339-1140 is the text line. The phone line is 1-800-920-1140. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick C. Radio. Your thoughts on the NBA Finals Game 2 between the Celtics and Warriors yesterday. Also coming up in 90 seconds, did a head coach purposely damage his team before exiting?
It's the Nick Cattle Show.
This, I think, speaks to the power of the media and the power of
The Nick Cattle Show.
On Sports 1140 KHTK.
Time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. Was happening on a Monday. You heard my thoughts on Finals Game 2. I thought the Warriors were more physical. I thought they had more urgency. They were getting to the 50-50 balls. They were getting some offensive rebounds. They were aggressive in taking the space away from the Celtics on the perimeter. I also thought the officiating was horrible, specifically first and third quarter. I thought it was a joke. Thought it was one-way traffic. And I thought the Celtics, because of the officiating, they let it get into their heads, and they fell apart. They had a meltdown in the second half. And they ended up getting boat raced. So now we get ready for Game 3 in Boston on Wednesday night. Your thoughts, 916-339-1140. Don't forget, you can call us as well, 1-800-920-1140. On Twitter, it's at Sports1140 KHTK. Verlad, any thoughts on last night's game, what you saw?
I think it's exactly what the Warriors needed to do to show their dominance in the game, and they're going to have to do something that hasn't been done since March and beat the Celtics twice in a row.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing, right? This Celtics team, they've responded every single time. They are, I believe, 6-0 after a loss in this postseason. And as Chris said, they haven't lost back-to-back games since March. So can the Warriors go on the road and kind of impose their will in Boston? That'll be the next question. JJ, your thoughts on last night's game? Anything jump out to you?
No, pretty much what I kind of expected, as you kind of said a little bit last week with the you thought the Warriors would bounce back, and you wouldn't be surprised that if the Celtics, lost by 20, and that's kind of what happened. I think really when it comes down to it is, again, who do you trust in the long run? Do you trust a veteran club, guys who've been there compared to guys who probably have not been there? But, again, stars are stars, and we'll see as they move over to the East Coast which star shines brighter.
All right, so we'll get to your thoughts in a couple of minutes here on the Warriors Celtics. Before I get to your thoughts on that, Quinn Snyder out in Utah. Talked about him last week. There was a story on ESPN.com saying that Snyder could possibly leave. And that felt like that was the indicator, right, that it was going to happen. That story came out. It just felt like that was a last shot, whether it was from the front office or from Snyder's team. But somebody was leaking that because it was in the danger zone. And here we are now. You've got Snyder. He's leaving. Here was Snyder earlier today talking about why he decided to leave Utah.
I couldn't be more grateful for my time here. There's so many people that are responsible for that. To the extent there's a real sense of loss and some sorrow and sadness, I think that's to be expected given everything that that took place here. As I tried to say in my statement, which was a challenge to try to capture a lot of that for me in even making a decision, but it was just time. I tried to give voice to that, and it really isn't any more complicated than that as far as trying to look into a lot of different reasons and things like that. I just felt like I got to a place where it was time.
The old new voice. This is what happened in Boston last year, right? The Celtics, Brad Stevens, he said he felt like the team needed a new voice. He moved up to the front office, and Udoka came in. Snyder saying the same thing. He feels like he has reached his limit. He's been in Utah for like 8 years. And usually you see this as a trend. Once you get to 7, 8, 9 years as a head coach, in the NBA especially, you start to kind of lose your voice. Not everybody is Greg Popovich. And so Quinn Snyder feels like the guys obviously are not receiving the message from him the same way they did last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So he is stepping aside. He's done. There was, as part of this report, a contract extension conversation that happened between each side, which is fascinating to me. Because if they did talk to Snyder about contract, then maybe Snyder didn't necessarily feel like his voice was old. Because if you feel like that guys need a new voice, then why would you talk about possibly extending your time there? So that's kind of the mixed messaging between what Snyder is trying to sell us and what the reporting is. The reporting says they were talking contract, but Snyder decided to walk away. I don't know if you talk contract if you truly believe and you are committed to this idea that your voice is not holding the same weight. Now, of course, the question is, who does Utah go after? Well, according to Shams Charania, among initial candidates for the opening, Knicks assistant Johnny Bryant, Jazz assistant Alex Jensen, Terry Stotts, who has been all over the place this offseason. He was most recently brought up with the Lakers job. Celtics assistant Will Hardy, who was mentioned as a possibility here in Sacramento before Mike Brown was hired, and Raptors assistant Adrian Griffin. Those are the names right now. And just a couple of quick thoughts on this. Number one, Utah's at a crossroads. We'll talk later on about Donovan Mitchell apparently not being too happy. You've got Donovan Mitchell. You've got Rudy Gobert. I saw a report today that the Chicago Bulls are interested in Gobert. So they're at a crossroads. They got to look at this roster and say, is this the roster that can take us to the promised land? Do we try to add to this roster, or do we make significant changes? And speaking of change, we all know the new guy in town is Danny Ainge, and I think Ainge is not there to sit on his hands. I would imagine he's going to make a move or two or three or four, who knows? But I would expect Ainge to change something about this roster and this dynamic. And you wonder, maybe Snyder didn't feel like Ainge was supporting him. And we always know this. When somebody comes in new to take over an organization, a lot of times they want their guys, and they should want their guys. So Ainge, I wouldn't be surprised if, looking at Quinn Snyder's contract, I think he had, 1 or 2 years left. Looking at that contract, I wouldn't be surprised if Ainge said, well, let's allow this thing to kind of play out and see where we're at. Maybe Snyder didn't feel like he was supported, and maybe that also helped his decision. Maybe he knew Ainge was going to look elsewhere eventually and said, I might as well get ahead of this thing and maybe focus on my next step. So the Ainge part of this is absolutely a significant chunk, I believe. And what this does, it really puts Utah in a tough spot because, look, maybe they did not want Mike Brown. Maybe they did not want Darvin Ham. Maybe they did not want Kenny Atkinson, who looks like he's going to get the gig in Charlotte. But maybe they did. And this limits the options. This limits the options for what they want to do. If you're looking at a head coaching candidate, let's say you had 4 or 5 guys on the list. What happens if 2 or 3 of them have been taken away from you? Now you're left, right? I mean, imagine if these names that I just read to you, according to Shams Charania, imagine if Terry Stotts and Will Hardy and those other guys, what if they were 4th, 5th, 6th options for Utah? And instead, the last few weeks, they've been going back and forth with Snyder to try to figure out if he's going to stay or not. So he might have gotten in the way of Utah quickly going out and getting, quote-unquote, their guy. Now, of course, if you're the new coach, whoever gets this job, you have a lot of questions, don't you? I mean, if you get this gig, what is Danny Ainge planning to do? Is this roster that is the roster right now, current day, is this going to be the roster 2 weeks from now, a month from now? What's the roster? And with the new roster, if there is a new roster, what are the expectations? What do you expect me to do? If I'm taking over this team, am I expected to immediately build off of what Snyder did? Because if I'm expected to build off of what Snyder did, but I'm trading one of Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. So what's the roster? Who could be gone? What are my expectations? And what's the deal? How many years? Am I getting 3 years? Am I getting 4 years? Are you truly committed to me? So there's a lot of questions now to be answered in Utah. With that roster, with the coaching staff, with what Ainge is going to do, how involved is he? I don't think he takes the job just to sit around and watch everybody else do work. So Utah, again, they're at a crossroads. And maybe that's why Snyder said goodbye. So I don't know what this team is going to look like next year. I don't know what's happening here the next couple of seasons. So I'm out. See you later. I think they're tired of my voice. KHTK's 2022 NBA draft coverage brought to you by Power Business Technology. You can visit them online at powercopiers.com. Again, it's powercopiers.com. 916-339-1140. Text line, phone line, 1-800-920-1140. As time moves forward, it only gets uglier for a quarterback in this franchise. That's coming up next.
Out with the hot takes and in with the smart takes.
You're a smart guy. You're my favorite talk host here because you say it how it is.
It's the Nick Cattle Show on Sports 1140 KHTK.
F-Way, YouTube channel, Sports 1140 KHTK. You can check us out, watch us live. Make sure you chat as well. And F-Way says that the Kings should have waited. They should have waited to see if Quinn Snyder was going to spring free instead of going out and getting Mike Brown. Couple things on that. You don't know if Quinn Snyder would want to be here. That's one. Two, maybe you liked Mike Brown better than you liked Quinn Snyder. I'm not saying that's the case, but that is quite possible. Also, if Quinn Snyder becomes available and you waited, what happens if you waited and you missed out on Quinn Snyder? Then who are you left with? So lots of questions, right? I mean, that's one of those, hey, we've got this guy in hand, we can get him right now, or do you want to try and wait and get that other guy? Because if you swing and miss on that other guy, then you might be left with your 6th, 7th, 8th option. It's a big risk. I mean, I would like Quinn Snyder as well. I like Mike Brown, but I said at the beginning of this head coach process, before Brown was hired, Atkinson and Snyder were at the tops of my list. And then obviously Atkinson pulled out. Snyder in Utah went back and forth forever. And now finally he's gone out of Utah, resigning. And you ended up with Brown. So I don't think it's one of those things where you look back and you regret it, because it was no guarantee that Snyder would have been here. Nick Cattle Show here on a Monday. Only show of the week. Rest of the way we are off due to A's baseball. And man, I'll tell you, another week, more bad news for Deshaun Watson. A 24th allegation has surfaced. It is now part of another lawsuit against Watson. And I'm going to try to clean this up as much as I can. But here is what the allegation is. Here's what it says in the filing. Watson reached out to a plaintiff a few days later to schedule a second massage. Plaintiff agreed. The second massage took place on August 9th of 2020. At the beginning of the session, Watson did not want to use the draping that is typically used in a massage. Instead, he requested a small towel. Of course, we've heard this before in other accounts of what happened here allegedly between Watson and these women. He requested a small towel. Watson also insisted on starting the massage with him lying face up. Reminded the plaintiff he only wanted her to focus on his upper body and abdomen. Then he demanded that she work on his inner thighs and quadriceps. During the massage, his tone became aggressive as he repeatedly demanded that she go higher and higher. She did. As the massage continued, Watson made piercing eye contact with the plaintiff. At this point, she became very uncomfortable with the situation. She was also scared because Watson was in her apartment, and he was much bigger and stronger than the plaintiff. She also did not want to upset Watson for fear of retaliation against her small business. As the plaintiff attempted to focus on getting the massage completed at some point, Watson was excited, so to speak. Towel falls off. Things happen. You can read about those things yourself, because there's no way I can possibly explain what happened or describe what happened and do it cleanly, so you can check it out. Watson immediately left the room, ran into the plaintiff immediately left the room. And Watson offered no apology or explanation for his conduct. He instead got dressed, paid the plaintiff $150 via Cash App, and left. Shortly after the massage, plaintiff called her a close friend to tell her what happened. They were both mortified by Watson's conduct. No further massage sessions. She shortly thereafter quit massage therapy. So that is the 24th allegation levied against Deshaun Watson, and which means we now have 24 lawsuits on our hands. Here's Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk talking about this latest allegation, what he thinks it means.
Lawsuit number 24 is expected to be filed today against Deshaun Watson. His lawyer, Tony Busby, told Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer that on Friday. Friday, an eventful day for the case. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on this because I think everybody finally understands where this case is evolving to. I think Deshaun Watson has no choice but to admit, and I think his lawyer essentially was flagging that issue on Friday, that when it's time to try these cases, it will be acknowledged by Deshaun Watson that he did hire a stream of massage therapists, 24 who ultimately sued him, another 18 who vouched for him, hoping, expecting, anticipating, wondering if these things would become consensual sexual encounters and trying to engineer that outcome.
Nick Cattle's show on a Monday, almost said Friday. So when you look at what Florio is saying, he says he thinks there's no other way for Watson's defense to move than to say, hey, look, yes, these massages were booked with the idea that this could happen. Not necessarily that it was the intent of the booking of the massage, but that Watson was hopeful that it would end up resulting in this. That's Florio. Now, remember, Mike Florio is not just a football reporter. He's a former lawyer. So you always have to remember that when he's talking about court cases and how things will be handled. He would know better than I would. So if he says he thinks that's where this might be headed, I'm not telling you he's right. I'm just telling you that his opinion should be valued in this case because of his history as a lawyer. We always say innocent until proven guilty because that's the way it should be. That's the way it's supposed to be. I will say that the innocent until proven guilty approach gets tougher and tougher by the day when you look at what's going on with Watson. First of all, 22 women was tough enough. Now we've had a 23rd and a 24th come out and say that he did this to them. So if you believe that Watson is innocent, it's your right to believe that. But if you believe Watson is innocent, that means that you believe every single one of these 24 women are lying. They're lying. They're not only lying, they're colluding to work against Watson. And not only that, all 24 women don't have much of an issue suing Watson, which they know it'll eventually go public, which brings a lot of humiliation and a lot of other tough feelings that they have to go through emotionally and mentally. This is not easy for any of these 24 women to come out and say, this is what happened to me. It's not easy. And I know people say, oh, well, they'll get a lot of money. Not easy. So you have to believe that these 24 women, every single one of them, because if there's only one that's not lying, right? If you believe that, oh, they're all lying, maybe there's just like one or two that aren't lying, then that's one or two that aren't lying. Those are one or two women that he sexually assaulted and took advantage of. So you have to believe, if you believe he's innocent, you have to believe that every single one of these 24 women are lying and that they are out to get Deshaun Watson. They woke up one day and said, we got to go after this guy. The details. Again, you have to believe that these very descriptive accounts are dreamt up by all 24 women. That all of these disgusting, repugnant details about what happened to them, allegedly, you would have to believe that they came up with those on their own. That they dreamed up these scenarios and decided to move forward with these lawsuits with a very, very vivid imagination. The handling of this, too, just makes it even more difficult to believe that Watson is innocent until proven guilty and that he's, innocent of all these allegations. You've got the HBO debacle and what was said by his representation, which was embarrassing, saying that Tony Busby, who represents all of these women, he's just doing this to get social media followers and to be on TV. Really just throwing all of the women under the bus and disrespecting what they are alleging has happened to them, dismissing it almost. And you also have to think about this from a Cleveland Browns context. Every bad headline, every single story that comes out, every additional allegation, you've got to think about $230 million guaranteed. Every single time something comes out like has come out today, the 24th allegation, awful, awful details this woman says happened to her. Again, she's alleging it. You have to think about this. $230 million guaranteed. The Browns made the decision to hand over hundreds of millions of dollars to Watson, saying they did their work. Well, did their work show that there were 24 women involved? I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. And the NFL reportedly wants to try to figure out what they're going to do with Watson by this month. You know they want to make a decision before training camp happens in July. The clock's ticking. And it's like every other day something else bad comes out about Watson. I don't know how you handle this if you're the NFL. I don't know how you can allow him to just go out there and play football with this stuff surfacing and these headlines and these shows and these lawsuits that continue to be filed with, again, what these women are describing, what happened to them. I have no earthly idea how the NFL can allow this guy to go play football and act as if none of this is happening right now. And I know, innocent until proven guilty, but they do have an option. They can put him on the exempt list and they can pay him. So he doesn't have to lose any money. They can pay him and they can say, well, we don't want to get involved with this right now until all of this is done with. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone line's 1-800-920-1140. Don't forget, it's time to check out Cosi Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. You want to check them out. Coming up, did the 49ers take an unnecessary risk with Trey Lance's young career?
Live and local.
Upfront and opinionated.
It's the Nick Cattle Show right here on the King of Sacramento Sports Talk. Sports 1140 KHTK.
Yeah. Check us out. Got the app. You can download it. Your Play Store. Your App Store. Sports 1140 KHTK. I want to get to the Niners in a minute. And Trey Lance. Did they take an unnecessary risk with Lance's young career? Get to that in a minute. But first, we got some big news out of the NFL. Aaron Donald has a new deal with the LA Rams. Here's ESPN's Adam Schefter.
The Rams and Aaron Donald have reached agreement on a new deal that's really his old deal that just gives him more money. It gives him basically $60 million in a 2-year extension. It leaves him under contract for the 3 years and basically makes him the highest paid non-quarterback in history. It's $95 million over the 3 years of the contract. You compare that to other quarterbacks, it's a big number, and essentially that deal is getting done today, and it ensures that Aaron Donald now will be back for the Rams. We heard the retirement talk, the speculation about whether or not he would stay or go. Well, he is staying. They've been talking about doing this deal dating back to the Combine. I don't think anybody thought the deal wouldn't get done. Now it is officially agreed to, and it gives Aaron Donald an additional $60 million during the course of that extension.
$95 million through 2024. He is the highest paid non-quarterback. He deserves to be the highest paid non-quarterback.
Pay that man his money.
He is easily the best defensive player in football. He's been the best defensive player in football for a long time. I think he's a 7-time All-Pro. This is, if you're going to give this kind of money to a defender, Donald is that kind of defender. And, of course, we know the Rams are all in. The question for the Niners, if you're watching this, what's this do with Nick Bosa? JJ, how much money is Bosa worth?
A shade under Aaron Donald.
This is going to have him pay. And one thing you can look at with the Niners is they have taken their time. They've kind of dragged their feet with a lot of things this offseason. And you just get the feel that, it's going to cost them in the end. I don't know if it's going to, but I have that gut feeling, right? The Jimmy G thing is just dragged out. The Debo thing continues to drag out. You didn't get Nick Bosa done early in this offseason. Now Donald gets this restructuring. It might cost you a little bit more money to sign Bosa now to a contract extension. So they're kind of just sitting around, not doing a ton of business, and you wonder if it's going to bite them.
It's a great point because the Niners haven't been very proactive in the John Lynch regime. They draft pretty well to the most part, but being proactive, they haven't been doing the best with their own players. My question to you is, wasn't Aaron Donald just about to retire? Just last week, wasn't he like, I'm on my way out?
That was the money play.
Okay.
That was the money play.
I'm just asking. Now this guy's the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, but just a week and a half ago or 4 days ago, we were reading stories. He was, I'm 1 foot out the door. Now all of a sudden I need my $60 million.
I think it was, I'm going to retire, ... unless I get paid.
Okay.
You pay me money, you make me the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, I'll come back for a couple of years.
He had his children out there. They were popping bottles together. And, I think this is going to be my last hurrah. And, I don't know if I'm going to come back. And now all of a sudden on June 6th, this dude's $100 million in the bank.
He's doing well for himself. Oh. But again, if you're going to pay somebody, and the Rams, he just felt like it was going to get done. The Rams, they're all in. They're not worried about trading picks and giving money. They're all in. And you're not going to be all in and move away from the best defensive player in the league. Once you are all in and you've invested that much, you got to continue. You got to keep throwing them chips in the middle of the table. Nick Cattle Show here on a Monday. Let's stick with the Niners. So there's been lots of Trey Lance talk, as we know. Ourselves here at the show, we've talked a lot about Trey Lance. And as we get closer to camp, we start to look at some of these on-the-field questions, right? It's all been Jimmy G and Lance, and can he be a leader, and should they hold on to Garoppolo, and all that kind of stuff. As we get closer to camp season, legitimate camp, right? We're starting to see some mandatory mini camps now popping up across the league. As we get closer to training camp, we start to really pivot and pay attention to Lance on the field. and what we see from him, right? His production. How is he being coached? Which leads us to his quarterback's coach. I feel like the Brian Griese quarterback coach move has not been talked about enough. And Griese met with the media last week. Here's what he had to say about his move from the ESPN broadcast booth to being the quarterback's coach in San Francisco.
I needed a new challenge. And that coupled with the moment where ESPN decided to go in a different direction. I'm not saying they didn't, but they got a bigger fish, and I understand the dynamics of that. And I always knew that possibility and probably likelihood was out there. But I did get to do it at the highest level for 2 years, and I loved every minute of it. And so I had a decision to make at that point, and this opportunity came up, and it was a challenge that I wanted to run towards and not away from. And I'm excited about it. I'm rejuvenated by the opportunity to get back in the arena and to compete, to win and to lose and to lead, and to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Now, some could see this as a risk. You've got a first-time QB1. Yes, we know Lance started 2 games last year against Arizona, against Houston, but this is going to be the first time that he truly has the keys to the car at the NFL level. So the first time at the NFL level being the true legitimate QB1, and you give him a quarterback's coach who hasn't been a coach. He's been doing Monday Night Football. Before that, he was doing other, games on TV. He was doing college football. And so this is going to be the job of Griese to make sure that Lance is doing everything he should be doing to get ready to be the guy. Now, I don't mind it. I don't see this as a gigantic risk, and I'll tell you why. Number one, Griese has been the guy. And quarterback's coach job is not the most stressful, crazy job, right? You can sit there and say to yourself, as a former quarterback in the league, you know what it takes to prepare. You know what it takes to deal with some of the stuff in the locker room that you inevitably have to deal with when you are the starting quarterback. If you've been through it before, then you share those experiences that you've had with the young man, and you tell him how he can navigate through that. So Griese has not been a quarterback's coach at the NFL level before, but he's been a quarterback at the NFL level before. That makes him experienced. That makes him qualified because he's played the position. Secondly, even if Griese, let's say Griese is a dumpster fire, you still have Shanahan. Even if Griese is terrible, Shanahan can easily take over and just make sure that Lance is okay in the headspace. So Shanahan acts as a fail-safe for the Niners. I also like the idea, Griese hasn't coached, but at least he's been around the game, right? He's talked to coaches. He's watched a lot of film the past couple of years. He has seen quarterbacks across the league do the job. He knows how NFL offenses are evolving. So he's at least been around the game the past couple of years, which I think will help. And also scheme is going to help. Again, Shanahan, play caller, run game, all of that stuff. So I'm not too worried about Griese being the quarterback's coach. It was an interesting decision that they made because he was coming straight from TV, but I wouldn't freak out. 916-339-1140 is the text line. You can follow us on IG. You can follow us at YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Sports 1140 KHTK. Is it Draymond James or is it LeBron Green? We'll explain next.
Cattle Show.
On Sports 1140 KHTK.
So a video that I shot last night has gone viral, fellas. I posted a video of Draymond Green, and I'll get into Draymond in a minute because he was on his crap last night, and the officiating crew allowed him to be on his crap. But I tweeted out a video of Draymond during one specific play last night during Game 2. That video has now been viewed over 5 million times. And I tweeted it out last night. It was about 20 hours ago. It's just out of control. Out of control. Simple video from my living room that I took on my TV, viewed more than 5 million times in the Twitter world. The reason why I bring this up is because as I just quote tweeted, and if you want to see the video, you can check it out at Nick C Radio. Again, it's at Nick C Radio. The reason why I bring this up, though, is like a crummy part of the website, a crummy part of Twitter, is that all of these people take your video, and many of them don't even credit you. It's like they just grab your video, thanks, we'll use it, and we'll get more followers, and we'll do what we do. Thanks for the video, but we won't credit you.
Many of them, no one. No one does it.
It's just, it started with, didn't it start with like Rex Chapman, who just like started grabbing everybody's videos, and then he got like millions of followers, and people were like, wait a minute. But yeah, so I mean, it's crazy to see how it's just blown up. Just absurd. More than 5 million people have watched this thing. It's only 11 seconds long. But yeah, I mean, Barstool Sports, like, quote tweeted it somewhat. Not really. They kind of just took the video. It's like, Barstool, I bet you give your boy a little bit of love here. It's happening. What is this? Nick Cattle Show on a Monday, Sports 1140 KHTK. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Nick C Radio if you want to check out that video. Let's jump into Game 2. Let's jump into Draymond Green. So I was not surprised that the Celtics lost that game last night. Warriors tied it up 1-1. I said this on Friday. I expected the Warriors to punch back. I did not change my pick after Game 1. I still have the Warriors winning this series in 7 games. So I was not surprised that Golden State won last night. Not even close to being surprised. They did punch back. And really, everything began with the first possession of the game. So the Celtics win the jump ball. Al Horford ends up with it at the top, right? And Draymond Green immediately bodies up against him, takes the space, grabs the basketball, and causes a jump ball. It was immediate. It was Draymond Green saying, we're not going to play like we played last game. If you think we're going to kind of be surprised by your physicality and we're going to let you guys push around and do whatever you want to do, that's not what's going to happen this Game 2. What's going to happen this Game 2 is we are going to impose our will on you. We are going to be physical. We are going to be the ones that kind of set this tone. And I thought absolutely that's what Green did in the very first possession of the game. Here was Green after the win.
Just like I said, Steph Curry sets the tone on the offensive side of the ball. It's my job to set the tone on the defensive side of the ball. And I wanted to do that from the very beginning of the game. And, first play we come up with a jump ball, then we come up with a turnover. So very important for me to come out that way on that side, and I have to continue to do that. This series is not getting any easier. It's only getting tougher. So got to take that up even another couple notches.
Everybody knows Draymond, right? Everybody knows what he does. Everybody knows what he tries to do. And, I thought the Celtics, they failed to respond in the second half. They let Draymond Green get in their head. They let the physicality get in their head. They let the officiating get in their head. And they did not respond. They failed.
He's a habitual line stepper.
He is. And the Celtics collapsed. They collapsed. They knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. Chris, JJ knew. Everybody knew. Everybody knew. In the fourth quarter of Game 1, the Warriors were pushed around. They were manhandled. The Celtics were the much more physical team. Anybody who has a pulse and who has watched the Warriors and has watched Draymond Green, you knew exactly what was going to happen from the jump. And that's precisely what went down yesterday. And the Celtics failed to respond. And I give credit to the Warriors, and I give credit to Green for amping up the intensity. However, it would be disingenuous for me to walk into this studio today, do this show, and ignore the officiating from last night's basketball game. It would be disingenuous for me not to talk about what I saw. And what I saw in that first quarter was a joke. What I saw in that first quarter was preferential treatment that was given to Draymond Green and preferential treatment that was given to the Warriors. There's no doubt. You watch that first quarter, it's comedy. Jaylen Brown gets called for his second foul, didn't even touch Gary Payton. Gary Payton flops around as he's going to lay the basketball up. Brown gets his second foul called on him, which forces him to the bench. Shout out to that crew. Shout out to Tony Brothers for sitting Jaylen Brown when he was the best player on the floor in the first 4 or 5 minutes of that game. They single-handedly iced Jaylen Brown. Awful. Draymond Green gets into it with Jason Tatum. It's an inbound play. They're bumping each other's chests, right? They're talking stuff to each other. You know, fine. It's playoff basketball. The ref comes over. He talks to Draymond Green. He talks to Jason Tatum. All right, guys, settle down, settle down. You knew what was going to happen. You knew it. I knew it. Chris, JJ knew it. You knew that as soon as that inbound pass headed towards Draymond Green, he was going to flop and have his arms flying around and sell the call. Boom, foul on Jason Tatum. One of my favorite things that happened early in that game yesterday was when Draymond literally tackled Grant Williams. I'm not over-exaggerating. That is not hyperbolic to say. He literally tackled the man at the free throw line. And ABC showed the replay 5, 6, 7 times. And what you saw was Green tackling Grant Williams. Tackling him. And Grant Williams got the foul called on him. Grant Williams had nothing to do with anything. He standing there and Green runs into him, then wraps his arm around him and takes him to the floor. Are you telling me that's not one-way traffic when it comes to the crew? In the third quarter, you saw a lot of the same. Now, the third quarter, again, I am not excusing the Celtics' bad play. The officiating is not why the Celtics lost that game last night, but it certainly did not help them. And it certainly allowed the Warriors to play with tremendous physicality and get away with a lot. Golden State got away with a lot of things that the Celtics were not allowed to even attempt in that game last night. And that shouldn't be the way. Look, we shouldn't have these conversations. Kings fans, you know, you went through it. You know how it is to watch these playoff games at times and you see some of this officiating that goes just one way and it's so blatant. It happens. Now, people will say, well, Nick, are you saying the league throws games? Look, Kings, Lakers, back, in 2002, that's a different conversation. Do I think these officials try to throw this game last night? I'm not going to go that far, but what I will say is officials call the game a certain way. You know the personality of an official. You know what that official likes to call, doesn't like to call. You know the temperature, so to speak, of the series that's going on. Like I can tell you, and I said this to the guys in the office before the show today, I can tell you Tony Brothers, who officiated that game last night, since like 2015, the Celtics have gone 3-12 or something outrageous like that. I think 3-12. They've gone 3-12 in games that Tony Brothers has officiated. I would not say that's a coincidence. I would say the way the Celtics try to play basketball and the way that Brothers officiates games, two different worlds. And so when you have an officiating crew out there that does that, it leans it slants it towards a certain way. And they allow Draymond Green over and over and over again to dominate that basketball game without scoring many points. I mean, Dre was 9, 5, and 7 last night. He scored 9 points. And he's a very good defender. Again, I don't think he needs any help from the crew. He's one of the better defenders in the NBA. But they let him get away with a lot. And he even said it in the postgame last night, which I think was a mistake, by the way. Reminds me of when Tom Brady said during the football season that refs allow him to kind of scream and swear at him, and then the next game, Brady gets a flag thrown on him for unsportsmanlike conduct. But you've got Draymond talking to the media last night saying that he knows he gets some preferential treatment. I think he said differential. He used the wrong word, but he meant preferential. In the tweet that I tweeted, I just mentioned this a little while ago. The video that I tweeted that's gone crazy on Twitter is of Draymond Green setting not one, not two, but 3 moving screens. He looks like an offensive lineman. I don't kid you. Curry brings it past the half court. He literally moves Grant Williams from the initial action. Then he moves to the second level and removes Derek White from the action. And then he moves to the third level and gets Al Horford out of the way. 3 moving screens in one play, no call. And that happens consistently throughout every game when you watch Green play. The worst of it all was the technical. You kidding me? How do you not give him a double tech? So he's got his feet on the head of Jaylen Brown. He and Brown go back and forth. They get into a little kerfuffle. How many times have you watched a game? How many times have we watched a game, fellas, where you see kind of a back and forth like that, and what's the ref do? Ref runs in, goes technical, double tech, and points to both guys. It happens every time. It didn't happen last night. Why? Steve Javie told you why. A guy who actually officiated in the NBA. He sat there on ABC in front of the camera and told everybody that you officiate the game differently if somebody already has a tech. What? Call the game the way it's supposed to be called. If that guy got a tech, he earned the tech. And if he earns a second tech, then you give him the second tech and you throw him out of the game. That was a no-brainer call. Should have been ejected. I mean, you got Javie out there saying, "Oh no, when I was officiating, I was always aware of who had the techs." What an embarrassing moment for the NBA. Former official tells everybody, right? He said the quiet part out loud. Yeah, I officiated differently if the guy already has a tech. Why? A tech's a tech. Brutal. I mean, I don't know if it's Draymond James or if it's LeBron Green, but that dude was protected last night. He was protected like LeBron James gets protected. It was hilarious. Here was Jason Tatum in the postgame.
We know what Draymond brings to the game. And I love that about him. You know, obviously I played with him. And, we tried to match that. And I just kind of felt like we weren't getting the benefit of the doubt, when we were trying to play with that, physicality. We do got to take, better care of the ball. They got a lot of points off that, off our turnovers. That's something we got to be better, for next game. Because we know, throughout the playoffs, the games that we have high turnovers, we kind of result into a loss. So that's definitely a point of emphasis, taking care of the ball for next game.
Again, a lot of reasons why the Celtics lost that game. I'm not telling you the officiating was the reason why they lost the game. They turned the basketball over a ton. They shot like crap. They played with zero urgency in the second half. They lost every 50-50 ball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you just, these finals games, you can't have the one way that we had last night. If you're going to call it one way, call it both ways. If you're going to allow one team to be physical, allow both teams to be physical. If you're going to call ticky-tack fouls, call ticky-tack fouls on both teams. If a guy deserves to get thrown out of the game, throw him out of the game. Your job is not to protect that guy. It's his responsibility to act like an adult and know he has a technical and not get involved with what he got involved with. And I'm fascinated to see how Game 3 is going to be officiated in Boston. Fascinated. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone line 1-800-920-1140. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick C Radio. You can listen live to us at KHTK.com. What if Monty McNair is higher on De'Aaron Fox than all of us think? We'll discuss that in 90 seconds.
Out with the hot takes and in with the smart takes.
You're a smart guy. You're my favorite talk host here because you say it how it is.
It's the Nick Cattle Show on Sports 1140 KHTK.
I'll try not to talk about the Bruins firing Bruce Cassidy in this segment. That makes me angry. Time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. Check them out, Coastside Medical Clinic. Let's talk some Kings. So, Monte McNair obviously has a gigantic offseason on his hands right now. And as we talk about this roster, we talk about this team, I have said consistently, and Jay, I think you believe this as well, although you might believe he's a 3. I believe that, De'Aaron Fox is a 2. I think he's more of a 2. He's more, and I'm not talking on the floor as, 1, 2, or 3. I'm talking as priority. You get the alpha, right? You have the number 1 option, number 2 option, number 3 option. I think Fox is more of a 2 than he is a 1. And I have felt that way ever since I saw Fox start to develop and grow into what he's become. Now, if he continues to play the way he played post-Halliburton trade, maybe we have a discussion at another time, and maybe I'll change my opinion. You can do that. You can evolve. If Fox develops and gets better, then everybody has the right to say, well, he stepped up. He's gotten better, right? So when we look at this team, if you look at Fox as a 2, and if you look at Sabonis as a 2B/3, I would say Sabonis is more a 3. So I see Fox 2, Sabonis 3. I've said this when we talk about the number 4 pick. I've said if you're going to trade that number 4 pick, you trade that number 4 pick for somebody who you believe can be the number 1. That way, that person that you trade for is the number 1. Then you've got Fox as your second option. Then you've got Domas as your third option. That makes sense to me. I think they need a number 1 alpha. However, what if Monte McNair doesn't think that? Now, my read this whole time was the Halliburton for Domas trade happened because Indiana was not taking Fox in return for Domas. And so Monty had a decision. You either make the deal for the 2-time All-Star in his mid-20s by dealing Halliburton, or you don't make that deal and you hold on to everybody. You continue the season with Halliburton, Fox, and Davion. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Monty decided that he wanted to trade Halliburton, wanted to hold on to Fox, because he thought Fox and Domas fit better together. Again, that's not my take. My take is Halliburton had more value, and that's why Halliburton went to Indiana. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if Monty thinks Fox is a 1? What if Monty did not have as much of an issue trading Halliburton as I thought he did, as we thought he did? What if we're wrong? What if I'm wrong? And what if I'm not wrong, but the evaluation has changed? As I just said, people like to, especially now in 2022, you've got an opinion, you slam your feet into the ground, and you hold that opinion, right? You hold firm, you hold steady. You hold on to the take. You don't want to change by any means necessary. You're up to your knees in opinion, right? You're not going to change that. But when you're in the front office of a professional sports team, you evolve. And your critiques of a player might change. Your opinion of a player might change. Do you think people that did not like Giannis during the draft process still don't like Giannis? They're like, oh, we missed that one, guys.
I'm sure you'll definitely find some people.
Oh, good luck to those people then.
Yeah, he won a championship, but did he win 2, 3?
Was it really him, though? I mean, come on. Was it really him? Was it all him? I mean, Middleton hit some big shots, didn't he? So, evaluations change. And I wonder, maybe we're right. In the vacuum at that time, maybe Halliburton was traded for Domas because Halliburton had more value. Monty would have much rather traded Fox. But then post-Halliburton trade, Fox goes off, plays fantastic basketball, and maybe now Monty looks at Fox as a number 1 option. Maybe Monty says, wait a minute. That's the Fox that I want to see. Post-Halliburton trade, he was a different dude. And what if Monty believes that Fox can be an actual number one option on an NBA team. If he believes that changes everything, does it? Like when you look at Monty saying to himself, all right, we've got Fox. Like if Monty thinks Fox, Alpha, 1, Domas, 2, that changes the outlook of this offseason. Because now all of a sudden, as we talk on the Nick Cattle Show about what the Kings should do, and you guys and gals call us and text us and go to YouTube and you react to this, you say, well, they need a number one, Nick, right? They need an alpha. They need a guy. They need one of those top options, one of those Donovan Mitchells who we'll talk about later, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, or somebody like that. They need a number one option. Well, if Monty thinks Fox is that guy, then the Kings don't need the number one option, at least in his eyes. Which means what? Which means you're not shopping for a number one option anymore. You're shopping for a number 2 or a number 3 guy, which is much easier to get. It is much easier to attain a 2 or a 3 than it is a 1. That's why only so many teams have a 1. You have that guy, you hold on to that guy. So if Monty is looking at this situation and he feels differently about what he has on that roster, if he thinks Fox is a 1, then you have a lot more flexibility to find that third piece. You've got a lot more things you can do to find that third guy because you're not looking for a number 1 guy anymore, including keeping the 4 pick. If Monty thinks that Fox is a number 1 guy, then it makes it less likely he deals the pick. Because why would you give up the pick and other assets to bring somebody in to be a 2 or a 3 because you think your Fox is the 1? Wouldn't you much rather use that 4 pick and say, well, I want to pick a guy who might have a ceiling as a 1, but it's definitely a 3 and could actually be a 2? So I think it's more likely, again, if the premise is, I still think Monty wanted to get rid of De'Aaron Fox instead of Halliburton, but what if the premise is that Monty actually believes Fox is a number 1 option, then I think it's more likely you keep 4. What else does that do? That also puts some pressure on Mike Brown. Because if Monty believes that Fox is a number 1 option, then that means with some off-season tweaks, you think this is a playoff team. And now Mike Brown, he needs to win more games than maybe you thought he needs to win. Even if it's, the play-in, now it might be instead of the play-in, hey, you should be a top 6 or 7 seed because we think Fox is a number 1 option. We gave you your number 1 guy. We gave you number 2/3 in Domas. And then we got the 4th pick in the draft. We brought in another young, talented guy. And you might not have to trade Harrison Barnes, right? Like, if you draft somebody, if you think Fox is a 1 and Domas is a 2 and you draft your 3, then Harrison's your 4. And you go into the season with that, if that's the premise. It's interesting. Let's go to Kevin. He wants to talk about the Warriors. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah, how's it going?
Good. Hey, listen to your take on that game, and totally disagree. I'm not necessarily with all of the takes. I'm not saying that some of those screens couldn't be illegal. The illegal screens are done every single game, both sides. My biggest take is the fact that you have Steph Curry, who every single time he runs through the lane, gets held, pulled, kicked, whatever, and you're crying about this one little game because of some calls. This is a crock of crap, man. You got to look at the full play of the Warriors and how much they get pushed and shoved because there's movement.
Kevin, do you root for the Warriors?
I'm a Kings fan first. I do like the Warriors. I like Boston.
I like the Warriors too. Look,
I like good teams.
When we're talking,
look at this,
Kevin,
next time watch these guys run through the lane, especially Curry, for a stud gets zero respect.
I'll disagree with you, Kevin.
Respect.
Kevin, I'll disagree. I'll disagree with you. Look, when you look at this series, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I saw last night. If you think that game was called fairly, then we'll agree to disagree because I'm not going to talk you out of your opinion, and you're not going to talk me out of mine. We're up against it. No, Chris, we're up against it. Thanks. I appreciate the phone call. I watch a lot of basketball too. I know that's what you were going to say. I watch tons of basketball. If if you watch that game and you think it was called fairly down the middle in the first quarter, I can't help you. I disagree with you. If you think it was called fairly in the third quarter, disagree with you. Again, I'll say this again. I don't think it's the reason why the Celtics lost that game. But that game was one-way traffic. That game, from an officiating standpoint, if you tell me that the Warriors were not allowed more to do with their hands and physicality in that game last night than the Celtics were, I just disagree with that. I think it was clear. And I know moving screens happen every game. But Draymond Green and Bam Adebayo are known as two of the worst violators when it comes to moving screens in the game. There's a difference between moving a little bit and jobbing the system to what Draymond did. Again, go check out @NickC Radio on Twitter. I tweeted the video out last night. The dude literally set 3 ridiculous moving screens, egregious, on one play. And it happens every single possession, or near every single possession. And they're smashing Steph Curry. I'm sorry, I don't see that. I don't see Steph Curry not getting calls. I totally disagree with that. Totally disagree. Every star gets calls. Draymond's not a star. It's part of the problem. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone line's 1-800-920-1140. Don't forget, you can follow me @NickC Radio. KCK's 2022 NBA Draft coverage brought to you by Power Business Technology. Visit them online at powercopiers.com. Is it time for a franchise quarterback to get paid again? I'll tell you why I say yes next. All right, weekend replay hosted by our guy, Chris Ralad. Chris watches something over the weekend and then has his own thoughts and says, well, this should have happened instead of that.
Yeah,
this should have changed.
It's a segment where I say, like, if I was in this position,
Right.
I would have handled it like this.
If I was that guy or that woman.
Which is where I'm going with this segment, because
nice.
It is something I absolutely would not do ever, 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 but I have to give him his props for doing that. Now, you and me, big wrestling guys.
Yes. Oh, I know where you're going.
Cody Rhodes tore his pectoral muscle, and it's one of those things in wrestling, like, did he really, did he not? Well, when he took off his jacket, he 100% had a torn pectoral muscle. His chest, his bicep was black and blue. I would not have gone out there. I would have been in bed, struggling to breathe if I did something like that. Not only did he go out there and have a match in a cage, it was like one of his best matches that he's ever had in his career. So that's my weekend replay. He is much more of a man than I am. Congratulations, Cody Rhodes.
Dude tore his pec completely off the bone. His entire right side of his chest and his bicep was purple. And like Chris said, he was so swollen. Like his arm was like almost twice the size of what it usually is. And his chest, they took one shot of him when he was lying down on the mat from his head, like, looking down towards his head. So you could see his body as he's lying on his back. And you could see the right side of his body was so much more swollen and puffier than the left side that wasn't torn up. He wrestled for 24 minutes.
Too much.
And I know people say, professional wrestling's not real, blah, 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 blah. Listen, the dude had a torn pec off the bone and was out there physically doing the job for 24 minutes. Any physical activity with a torn pec.
He's getting slapped on his chest with a torn pectoral muscle.
Kendo stick up against it, being smushed up against it.
Oh, I'm getting like the chills just.
He was getting slapped with a belt. I mean, it was. Let me just put it this way. They're making the introductions in the ring before the match. And they put the camera on Cody, and I said to Kelly, because I told her what was happening. She doesn't watch a ton of wrestling. She'll go to the live shows with me because she enjoys kind of like the theater of it all. But she was watching this just to see what it would look like. Because I told her, I said earlier in the day, I said, man, Cody tore his pec. Awful luck for this guy because he's having a great run since his return. I said, it's totally off the bone. I said, he's going to wrestle tonight. She said, what? I said, he's going to go out there. And when they were making the introductions, he still had like his jacket on. But you could see a little bit of the right of his chest, and you could see a little of the bruising. And I was like, ooh, look at that bruise. And Kelly's like, yeah. And then he took his jacket off.
Ugh.
And you could hear the audience, like, audibly gasp. They had no idea how to react. It went silent. And for the first 6 or 7 minutes of the match, there was no reaction. And I don't think it's because they weren't liking what was happening, because it was a fantastic match. I think it was because people were they were feeling bad watching this guy do what he was doing. And it's like, how do I react? Do I cheer for this? Like, this dude's got a torn pec off the bone. So yeah, that was something else. And I would not have done that. No. So there you go. There's your weekend replay. Shout out to Cody, who's going to cut a promo tonight. Can't wait to see it. Cannot wait to see what he says. He cut a promo after the match and said it was 100% my decision. You guys paid for these tickets, and I was gonna do whatever I had to do to participate. All right. Good luck to you, Cody. But my feeling is that he was likely, this is my guess, I don't know, because I don't know anybody in the WWE. I used to kind of know Jerry Lawler, but not to the point where I'd text him about this. But my thought is that the doctor said, look, you can't do any more damage than what's been done. The bone, the muscle is completely off the bone.
You can't tear it more.
Yeah, you can't tear it more. It's completely off the bone. So it's a pain tolerance thing. And if you think you can get through this and you want to do this, then you are not at risk of further injuring yourself. Because I do not think the WWE would allow him to go out there if there was risk for further injury. So I think that's probably what the doctors told him. If you go out there, it's all you. It's all you. All right, so I was going to go football. I was going to go football, but I'm not going to go football because we have a couple of calls about the finals and Draymond Green and the officiating. So let's stick with that. Everybody's thought about the finals, so we'll stick with that here on the Nick Cattle Show. Let's go to Matt, who wants to talk about the officiating from last night's game. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how you doing, Nick?
Doing well.
Welcome to Sacramento.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a guy from 20 years ago that was lost to basketball.
Yep.
I'm kind of the guy that they sent you here to talk to you. Because I'm down on basketball so bad because it took so long to come out with that cheating scam with the referee and all that. Remember back in 2000?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember.
Yeah, it just tore me up. I was there watching the finals, watching the game when Chris Webber, they all got let down. We all got let down. So, we're kind of the people that you're here to talk to, and I appreciate your enthusiasm and everything. I really do. I like to welcome you.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate the phone call, buddy, and thanks for the kind words, and I thank you for the welcoming. And look, I hate, people sometimes think that, hosts enjoy talking about officiating. I hate it. I hate it. If I could sit here and talk about, and I did a good portion of this in the first hour, the pick and roll with Steph Curry and the transition offense by the Warriors last night. And they played really good defense. They did. They upped the intensity. They upped the physicality, and they deserve credit for that. And they put the pressure on the Celtics, and the Celtics fell apart. They completely crumbled. They fell apart in the second half. They turned the basketball over way too often. They didn't get to the 50-50 balls. They gave up too many offensive rebounds at times. But if I'm going to sit here and be honest about what that game was last night, unfortunately last night the officiating was a part of that game. I didn't mention the officiating once on Friday, and I would not have mentioned the officiating once on Friday no matter who won that game, no matter by how much. I told the guys in the office before the show, and I tweeted this on Thursday. I said, man, I thought Thursday night's game was officiated near perfect. I'm sure they missed a couple of calls, but there was nothing egregious. And I'm sorry, that first quarter last night was egregious one way. I don't know how you can see the foul on Jaylen Brown when he didn't touch Gary Payton, which was his second foul, which sent him to the bench. That's a terrible call. Green flopping on the inbound pass. They just gifted him that call. It's a terrible call. The fact that he tackled Grant Williams in the lane, just tackled him, and they called Grant Williams for the foul. I mean, there were 4 or 5 egregious calls made in the first 6 or 7 minutes of that basketball game, which put the Warriors in the bonus, which put the Celtics in big-time foul trouble. And I said it earlier, Tony Brothers, when he officiates Celtics games, the Celtics are 3-12 in those games. Now, maybe it's just a coincidence, but with the NBA and their history, and again, I'm not telling you that they try to throw that game and it's rigged and all of that stuff. I just think certain officials call games a certain way, and the NBA is well aware of that. And the texter says, Nick's just angry because the Celtics lost. I called the Celtics going to lose the game, number one. Number two, I picked the Warriors in this series. God's honest truth, as somebody who grew up in New England and is a Celtics fan and has been a diehard for, too long, longer than I want to admit, I'm fine with what happened. They walked away with 1-1. Mission accomplished. They have home court advantage. They take care of business on Wednesday and Friday. They're up 3-1. And I'll say it again, if people haven't listened critically enough, that game did not depend on the officiating. It set the tone for the Warriors to play a certain way. It set the tone for the Celtics to not play a certain way. And the Celtics, again, it was a tight game at the half. The Celtics allowed the officiating and Green and physicality and everything. They allowed it to get into their heads, and they played like crap. They lost because they turned the basketball over 18 times. They lost because they couldn't shoot the ball. They lost for a lot of reasons. But when I watch a game, I'm going to tell you how I feel about the officiating, whether it's, whoever's playing. Couldn't care less. When I see a badly officiated game, I'm going to tell you it's badly officiated. CD on the text line, 916-339-1140. Nick, there's home cooking at times regarding officiating the off and play to the home team and the fans. Yeah, I thought it was really, really bad in the first quarter. And by the way, I was following the game on Twitter, and I saw a lot of people that are national that were tweeting the same thing, saying the Celtics aren't getting a good whistle. These calls are really tough on the Celtics. So, again, no matter who was playing last night, I thought it was clear that one team was allowed to do more stuff physically than the other team. Go watch the game again last night if you want. Go watch Draymond Green off the ball. Watch how many times he's mugging people off the ball.
Is there any way we could see that?
If it's on the DVR, I got YouTube TV.
Anywhere else we could see Draymond just going and guarding people like he's in the NFL?
Yes, you could go check out at Nick C Radio. A video that's been viewed over 5 million times.
And counting. Let's get it to 6.
And counting. Let's get it to 6 million. Tell all your friends and family. At Nick C Radio. And give me credit when you tweet it out. Nobody gives you credit nowadays.
Did KHTK give you credit?
No.
What?
The station I helped run. Couldn't even get credit for my own video.
Bad job by them.
Watkins.
Please would be nice.
Watkins got me. No, so you could go see it at Nick C Radio. He says 3 moving screens. Looks like Joe Tooney. Looks like one of the best pulling guards in the NFL. Moving screen on not 1, not 2, but 3 guys. Egregious. And the guy who called earlier about, this situation with Steph Curry getting hammered all the time, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see Steph Curry getting, mugged out there. I mean, maybe because Curry's 200 pounds, maybe when he gets hit by a bigger dude, it might look more impactful. Anyway, got a lot more coming up.
If you want live and local talk in the afternoon, this is the only place to get it. It's the Nick Cattle Show on Sports 1140
KHTK.
Jeremy Woo's latest mock draft is out for SI. We'll get to that in a minute. Who does he have the Kings picking at number 4? Here's a little bit of a hint for you. It's not Jaden Ivey. Hey, we finally have a mock draft that doesn't have Jaden Ivey going to the Kings at 4. We will talk about that mock draft in a minute or two. And by the way, when we talk about the draft, coverage brought to you by Power Business Technology. Visit them online at powercopiers.com. I also want to let you know, coming up in about 15 minutes at 5 o'clock, Monty McNair should be on the phone right now. He should have been on the phone all day long trying to pry a true alpha, a number 1 guy away from one team in the NBA. We'll get to who that guy is and why I believe he is a nearly flawless fit for the Kings. Monty should be on the phone right now. Speaking of phones, let's go to Rajam up next. He wants to talk about Draymond Green, officiating, all that good stuff. Hello, Tarajam. Hello. Are you there? 3, 2, 1. Goodbye. Does Paul want to talk about De'Aaron Fox? Let's talk about De'Aaron Fox. Paul, what's up, buddy?
De'Aaron Fox. Oh, don't talk about De'Aaron Fox.
What do you want to talk about?
He doesn't have a shot. I don't know. So I wanted to ask you a quick question, Nick. Who do you feel? A couple things I would like to ask you. I'm going to get off the subject a little bit, but we're going to talk about my Kings. I don't care about the Warriors. I don't care about the Celtics because I don't like neither team.
Okay.
I'm a Kings fan till the day I die. Who do you think that a couple things. I want to talk about football, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to ask you first, who do you think the Kings should pick up? If not the draft, who do you think they should trade to get a good player?
All right, well, I will say first in the draft right now, I'm leaning Jaden Ivey. Second, as far as player who I think they should go after, I'll tell you that at 5 o'clock.
Okay. And then question for you about this. I know we're going to go early on football, but I've been a Broncos fan for a long time, ever since John Elway, long time.
Yep.
I've been waiting a lot of years. How do you feel about Broncos are going to do this year in the AFC West?
Well, I'll tell you, look, and I want to tell you, when we get closer to football season, Paul, we will cover every single team here on the show. We'll have previews for every team across the NFL, so you want to stay tuned for that. Big football guy, big NFL guy. As far as the Broncos, and thanks for the phone call, Paul, I appreciate you. As far as the Broncos, look, offensively, I don't think they have a lot of question marks. They're set up nicely. Russell Wilson, obviously a huge, massive upgrade at quarterback. I think you're good at the young skill positions. I saw that Jerry Jeudy left today's camp with some kind of a muscle issue. That might be a problem. But if Jeudy stays on the field, him, Cortland Sutton, you've got some really good young talent. I like the backfield. I like the backfield that you have. Defensively, I also like what you've got. I think defensively, when you look at this team, you have a lot of depth when you're looking at the Broncos defense and what they can bring to you at all three levels. When you look at DJ Jones, who you bring in, of course, we know where he's from. Bradley Chubb, he's got to stay healthy. Bradley Chubb has to absolutely stay healthy. I would like one more guy on that defensive line that I would be super confident in. Of course, you traded Von Miller. You didn't really replace him. You bring in Randy Gregory, who could, who should be able to help you. That's a guy who can get some pass rush. So I think they're fine on the defensive line. Their secondary should be absolutely no joke. Their secondary should be as legitimate as any secondary in the NFL. Justin Simmons might be the best safety in the league. And then, of course, you've got Pat Surtain II, who was a fantastic pick last year in the top 10 or so of the draft, if I remember correctly. But Surtain is very talented. He's one of the best young corners in football. Ronald Darby, I think, is good. You go out and you sign K'Wan Williams. 49ers fans know all about him and what he can do in the slot. So, defensively, I think you've got a lot of tools. Not the biggest, Josie Jewell guy, but he's fine. And offensively, again, as I mentioned, those young skill position players, Jerry Jeudy, if he can stay on the field, Cortland Sutton, if he can stay on the field. Don't want to forget Tim Patrick, big contested catch guy down the field. So I think you're in really good shape. I want to see Javonte Williams touch the ball more. I thought they split a little too often with Melvin Gordon last year. I'd like to see him get the football a little bit more. The offensive line hasn't been spectacular. They were better last year, at least from what I saw. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos are a player. The thing about the Broncos, though, Paul, AFC West is no joke, right? Look at what the Chargers did. They bring in Khalil Mack. They make some other changes there defensively. They bring in J.C. Jackson, so their defense is legitimate. Justin Herbert, one of the best young starting quarterbacks in all of football. They still have Keenan Allen. They've got a lot of weapons on that offense. Austin Eckler had a combined 20 touchdowns last year. Chargers are no joke. The Chiefs, we know what the Chiefs bring to the table. I think they're fascinating. You know, they trade Tyreek Hill. How do they replace that? He's unique to that offense. Travis Kelce's 32, 33. Is he starting to age out? But Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is always dangerous. And we know the Raiders right in the backyard. You know, when you look at what they've done, they bring in Devontae Adams. They've got Hunter Renfrow in the slot. McDaniels has a lot of experience and success with the slot receiver, also the tight end position with his history at New England. Darren Waller's tough. Hunter Renfrow's tough. You bring in the ace and Devontae Adams. So offensively, at the skill positions, they're good. I think Derek Carr's a top 12 quarterback. Concerned about their offensive line. I'm really concerned about, you know, some of the things they did up front in front of Derek. That could be an issue. And defensively, they still have a few things. I'm not in love with the secondary. They need Rock Ya-Sin to hit. If Rock Ya-Sin is a solid number 1 or 2 cornerback, you got Chandler Jones now, you got Max Crosby, you've got a really good pass rush. So the West is tough and the AFC is tough. Let's get to Jeremy Woo's mock draft. Number 1, Jabari Smith. Number 2, Paolo Banchero. Even though he said he hated Oklahoma City. Still going to draft him. Number 3 is Chet Holmgren. And I told you, for one of the first times, I think we've only had 2 mock drafts that have not had Jaden Ivey going for. Jeremy Woo, who we had on the show last week. If you want to go check out that podcast, KHTK.com. Keegan Murray going number 4 to the Kings. Dun, 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 dun. He also says he considers Dyson Daniels as a possible dark horse. I don't love the reasoning that he has Keegan Murray. It's pretty much what we've heard about, they have a playoff mandate, and he might not be, Ivy might not be the best fit with Fox. Draft the best player available. I do think Murray's safe, though. Like, Keegan Murray's safe pick. You draft Keegan Murray, I wouldn't be like, that's going to be a bust. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I think he's going to be a solid NBA player. His ceiling might be fringe all-star level, but, he can shoot, spread the floor. He'd be that 4, small ball 5. He can defend a little bit. He was arguably the best player in college basketball last season, so I don't think he's bust material. I think he's safe. Like, if the Kings drafted Keegan Murray at 4, what are we, 2 weeks away on Thursday? If we hit Thursday, right, 2 weeks from Thursday, NBA draft is happening, and the Kings draft Murray at 4, I'd say, okay, 12 to 15 points a night, 7-8 rebounds, some good shooting, see what he does defensively. But if you ask me, I'm still enamored with Jaden Ivey's ceiling. He is still my pick. Right now, it would be Ivey. Right now. Subject to change. Still a lot of time left. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Again, don't forget our friends at Power Business Technology when we talk draft, powercopiers.com. All right. So there is an NBA star that isn't happy. And I say it's time for Monty McNair to pick up the phone, and make the call. Who is the number 1 guy that I think would be perfect for the Kings? Find out next.
If you want live and local talk in the afternoon, this is the only place to get it. It's the Nick Cattle Show on Sports 1140
KHTK.
I got the guy, Sacramento. I got the guy. Monty, pick up the phone. It's time to dial the digits. We've been talking about this offseason for the Kings and how I think it is absolutely crucial that they do everything they can with every fiber of their being to bring in a number one option, a number one alpha, a guy that when you look at this roster, you say, he's the dude. I think Fox is a 2. I think Domas is a 2B/3. The Kings need that alpha. They need that number one guy. And if you were paying attention to any of the sports world yesterday, you saw that Quinn Snyder decided to resign from the Jazz. He gone.
I got no more use for this guy.
They need to find a new head coach in Utah. Says that he felt like the team needed a new voice. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story with the Utah Jazz yesterday was how the Snyder situation has impacted Donovan Mitchell. Here's ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski.
Yeah, Malika, Quinn Snyder is all Donovan Mitchell's known in Utah. And I think when Donovan Mitchell signed that 5-year extension a couple years ago, I think one of the hallmarks of that Jazz organization was stability, continuity. And, ownership had just changed at that time. And since then, Dennis Lindsey has left as the president GM and now Quinn Snyder. And I think, so much of, I think his comfort level in Utah has certainly been tied to his relationship with Quinn Snyder, his belief in him, certainly one of the elite coaches in the league. And it was a jarring day yesterday. It was a jarring conversation for Donovan Mitchell to have with Quinn Snyder when he told him that he was going to step down as head coach. And I think right now for Donovan Mitchell, he's just trying to figure out what that means for this organization, what that means moving forward.
Pick up the phone right now. If you haven't picked up the phone yet, pick up the phone right now. I'm sure Monty or Wes or somebody else has already picked up the phone. Anjali, maybe she picked up the phone. But pick up the phone right now. If you are Monty McNair, Donovan Mitchell's the guy. If Donovan Mitchell is available, you do everything you can to bring him here to Sacramento. You do everything you can. Now, the question is, how much will it cost? Let me bounce this off of Vlad and JJ, this possible deal that I came up with last night. As soon as I saw Donovan Mitchell being unhappy in Utah, with all the rumors about one of him or Gobert going elsewhere this offseason, I immediately went to the trade machine, fired that puppy up. And here is my offer to Utah. Harrison Barnes, the number 4 pick in this year's draft, a top 5 protected pick in 2024, because you can't give up picks in back-to-back years. And if I had to give a sweetener, I think I'd be fine with a swap and say 2026 or 2027. That's the deal. Barnes, the 4th pick, top 5 protected in 2024. And if I had to add a pick swap later on, I'd do it. Vlad, yes or no on that deal?
Yes.
See, I like it, though. I want it to be tough enough. I had somebody tweet at me yesterday, that's an overpay. I don't think it's an overpay. Well, when you see guys that are the age of Donovan Mitchell, a true number 1 dude, you're not going to get that guy unless you deal multiple first-round picks. You're not going to get him for 1 pick. You're not going to get him for Harrison Barnes in a 2026. It's not going to happen. If you think that, I'm sorry, but you're being delusional. You might want to talk to somebody, have a glass of water, do something about it. That deal's not happening. So I wanted to create a deal where I think it would be fair, which is tough, right? You have to give something to get something. JJ, would you pull the trigger?
Bye. Listen, man, I don't care what the fourth pick is going to bring back. I'm taking Donovan Mitchell.
Watkins is tough. We talk draft all the time. Watkins is always tough, right? It's like, Watkins, would you trade for this guy? Thumbs down. Watkins, would you trade for this guy? Thumbs down. Watkins, Donovan Mitchell. Thumbs up from Watkins. Passed the test. I would do it. I would do that trade yesterday, even with the pick swap. Even with the pick swap. Look, Barnes is going to be gone, I think, after next year, right? I don't think he's going to be here long term. People thought he might have been traded last trade deadline. He wasn't. Barnes, good player, fourth option on a really good team. I think you deal him to Utah. Utah's, okay, we got our third or fourth option on the team figured out for this year. Maybe Danny Ainge wants to pivot and deal him. I don't think Barnes is somebody that you need to desperately hold on to. The fourth pick, all the picks, the price of business. That's the price of doing business. You'd also have to include Rashawn Holmes in the deal to make the money work. Holmes doesn't fit with Domas. Sorry. Rashawn Holmes is not going to play a lot of minutes with Domas here. It's just not going to happen. So, Barnes, Holmes, two players you can live without. The picks are the picks. You have to give to get. And here's why I would be willing to give. Lots of reasons. Number one, Donovan is an alpha. Donovan is an alpha, I think, straight up. I think he is a guy, if you've seen him play in the playoffs, when he's been healthy especially, you remember the Donovan Mitchell versus Jamal Murray show a couple of years ago? This dude is not afraid of the moment. He is not afraid of the moment. I think he is a true number one. He's an alpha. He might not be Kevin Durant. He might not be up in the world with the Jason Tatums or the Lukas or the Stephs, but he is a one. He's a true one. Secondly, he's not only a true one, he's not only a true alpha, he's 25 years old. And when we talk about this roster, we talk about a certain age group, right? This cluster. You've got Fox, who's 24 or so. You've got Domas, who's 26. Donovan slides right into the middle of them. Whoop. Perfect. You got a guy who's in his mid-20s. He has not even reached his prime yet. And if you set up this roster and you have Fox, Donovan, and Domas, if you have, I like that, De'Aaron, Donovan, and Domas, nice. If you have those three guys lined up, all three of them have yet to enter their prime, which means over the next couple of years, and if you win enough games and you do this right, for the next 7, 8 years, 9 years, you have three guys who are all all-star caliber who are going to be playing for you in their prime. We're not talking dudes who are like James Hardin, he looks washed. We're not talking about somebody who's on the other side of 30. 25 years old, legitimate number one, who slides right in with your other two players age-wise. It gets even better. If you make this deal, guess what? Donovan Mitchell is not a free agent after this season. Donovan's got some term. So Mitchell's contract, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and then he has a player option. So if you think about it in this way, his contract aligns with Sabonis's. So if you look at this roster, you say, we can run this out with De'Aaron, Donovan, and Domas, and then in 2 years we see what we've got. If that's working, and we're winning basketball games, those guys will be set. We extend those guys. If they're happy, we're happy. We extend them. Their contracts are coming up at the same time pretty much. Works out perfectly. We can fix the books and set it up perfectly. We know the money's going to be there. We know, who's coming up, who's not coming up. Perfect. So that allows you to hold on to all three of those guys. You're not dealing for a rental. Right now, Jeremy Grant would be a rental. You're dealing for somebody who has term for a couple of years, and you can be confident that you have somebody that you can build with. Donovan, De'Aaron, and Domas. They not only slot in perfectly from an age standpoint, but when you think about having the alpha, this makes it more comfortable for Fox and Domas, right? This makes it easier to look at this roster and you say, Donovan's clearly the number one guy. Once you get past Donovan being the clear number one, you have De'Aaron, who is the clear number two, and you have Domas, who is the 2B/3. Donovan can play off the ball. Fox can play off the ball. Fox can have the ball in his hands. Donovan can have the ball in his hands. Domas can have the basketball in his hands. All three guys seem to be good teammates. You've got three guys who I think are very competitive, especially Domas and Donovan. I think they're two highly competitive individuals who are burning to win, and you put them together. Like, if you've got Donovan, De'Aaron, and Domas, you're talking playoffs. I mean, you are in the conversation. You're not just looking at this saying, ooh, well, maybe if they play their best basketball, they might slide into the play-in. You have playoff caliber talent. You have young, before their prime, playoff caliber talent with a competitive spirit. That would be a fun basketball team. De'Aaron, Donovan, and Domas, could you imagine? So if you ask me, out of all the names that we've discussed, I think Donovan excites me the most. Age, contract, personality, temperament, competitiveness. Fits. And by the way, I see the text saying that Dave this morning said that De'Aaron Fox is the same player as Mitchell. I would disagree with that. Maybe myself and Dave can have that conversation sometime. But I would disagree with that. I do not think they're the same guy. I just don't. But we'll see. You know, I think he's somebody who, you know, when you look at him, I think he can play off the ball. I mean, he's played off the ball with Mike Conley in Utah. So I think he can play off the ball. But Donovan, to me, is a lot of fun. Also could open up you moving on from De'Aaron down the road. You have options. Your thoughts, Donovan Mitchell, 916-339-1140 is a text line, phone line, 1-800-920-1140. Don't forget to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, who's dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. The text line getting Mitchell is great, but would Utah go for this trade? Again, it depends on what other teams have to offer, but you have the fourth pick in the draft right now. And you have all of your future picks. And Harrison Barnes is a good player. Could somebody else beat it? Hey, if somebody else beats it, somebody else beats it. But if you're Monty, you make the phone call. In 90 seconds, we talk NBA Finals with NBA Radio's Brian Geltzeiler coming up next.
It's the Nick Cattle Show.
This, I think, speaks to the power of the media and the power of
the Nick Cattle Show
on Sports 1140 KHTK.
All right, let's talk NBA Finals with Brian Geltzeiler of NBA Radio. Brian, thank you for the time. It is much appreciated, my friend, on this Monday. Let's start with Draymond Green. Do you believe he should have been ejected last night?
No, but let me rephrase that. I think he should have been ejected. I don't think he should have been ejected because of what he did with Jaylen Brown. I think that Draymond's histrionics, you had a half dozen opportunities to give Draymond Green technical fouls in that game. And for whatever reason, the officials have become fearful of Draymond Green. Listen, Draymond Green can say whatever he wants after a game. The reality is this: his name's not on the marquee. People aren't coming and paying money and tuning on their TV to see Draymond Green play. It's Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on one side and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on the other. So I think some of this with Green and Green's brazenness after he gets 1T with the utter belief that no one will kick him out of a game. I would love to see someone kick him out of a game because I just think the optics have become very, very bad for the league, very bad for Green, even though he doesn't see it that way, and very bad for the Golden State Warriors.
Brian, what'd you make of Steve Javie saying on national television during the, look at the play with Jaylen Brown that, yes, I do change the way I officiate if somebody has a technical foul already. What'd you make of that?
I think it was honest, yet I don't think he really should have said it, Nick. Okay, I understand what he's saying, but by the same token, I think it speaks to a larger problem among the culture of officials. And listen, Steve's a frequent host on my show. I love having him. He's a terrific guy, and he's very transparent with us. So and personally, I'm quite fond of Steve. I think he's a terrific guy. With all that said, I think the fact is when you have officials that are tolerating a degree of nonsense from a player, and let's face it, a lot of what Draymond Green does with these refs, okay, gives him a competitive advantage. And, if you're afraid to call a T on him, well, maybe you're afraid to call a foul on him in certain spots or a travel on him in a certain spot because you don't want to get humiliated and you're not going to tee him up. This can equate to a competitive advantage. So I think Javie kind of admitting that what he admitted when he did. And again, Steve Javie's going to be on the broadcast. You want him to be transparent. Like, you don't want him to be anything but. Okay. But the reality is when it comes to how you handle Draymond Green and how you handle guys like Draymond, let's say it's not the only guy in the league that does this. Luka Doncic is as bad as anybody.
Right.
But his name's on the marquee. Draymond Green isn't. And I think there's a point to be proven here with Draymond that I would really, really like to see, Nick. And if he continues to do what he does, I think throwing him out of the game would absolutely be appropriate. Listen, at this point, the ref would have a lot of notoriety who decides to throw him out of a game. And I think it'd be very, very interesting to see.
Brian Geltzeiler is with us here, NBA Radio analysis, and of course, we're here at the Nick Cattle Show, Sports 1140 KHTK. Brian, what kind of changes did you see Golden State make defensively last night that you thought impacted the game?
Well, they stayed at home on shooters, so they didn't see Horford and Smart and Derek White with that volume of open shots, and I think that was a very, very big key. They figured, listen, we're gonna guard Tatum and Brown a little more straight up. That Tatum got his. Brown was 5 of 17, didn't have the best game, but part of what spoke to that was the fact that he had an extra really solid perimeter defender in Gary Payton on the court. I thought Gary Payton was really, really good in what he did, and whether it was this time on Tatum that moved Wiggins over to Brown, it really helped out a lot. So I think you'll see more of that out of the Warriors defensively. I think they're going to understand that, yes, guys like Horford, White, and Smart, they already beat him in one game and beat him pretty badly in that game. I get the feeling they realize they can absolutely do that again, and they're going to need. So they'll stay at home on shooters. By the same token, I think Boston will go more to the formula of the first game where Tatum, even though he didn't shoot it well the first game, seemed to hold the ball a little longer. Tatum was, kind of hung up on getting himself going, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He's a star player. He should absolutely do that. But I think in this kind of spot for Tatum, holding the ball a little longer is going to draw more attention, draw more bodies towards him. That's going to leave the other guys open. And I think when you saw what happens when the other guys get open in game one. So you'll see Boston adjust to a little bit of Tatum and Brown holding the ball a little bit longer.
Brian, can the Warriors win this series with Klay Thompson struggling the way he has in the first two?
Probably not. I think they're going to need more out of him. Listen, it's either got to be him or Wiggins. Now, Wiggins, at least from Wiggins' standpoint, he is giving them a tremendous amount of energy, Nick. He is really – last night I know the stats didn't look pretty, 11 points and 12 shots. Like, I get all that. But what they got from him a couple times on the offensive glass and what he's doing defensively is big. So even if Wiggins isn't getting going offensively, I think you'll end up being okay with him. Klay's got to really – they have to make a concerted effort in Boston to get Klay Thompson going early and often. And I know in the third quarter he hit a couple shots. He seemed to find himself a little bit, relate to the crowd. But that's got to carry over into the next game. That's got to have some momentum. And I do think they have to start to run more stuff for Klay. Kerr did run more stuff for Klay. I think he needs to do it a little bit earlier here. And to me, I know they love getting threes for Klay. Looks closer to the basket will be better for him. Getting him on the move, getting him off the bounce, letting him go to the rim. I don't mind putting him in the low post and giving him the ball there and letting him take turnarounds and make moves, see if he can draw doubles. But I do think that Steph Curry is going to do what he does, whether they feature him or not. He's too good to not feature himself. I think they have to look to feature somebody else, and that guy's Klay Thompson. Because I'll tell you this, Jordan Poole had a very good offensive game last night, scored 17 points, obviously hit that big midcourt three at the end of the third quarter. But I don't think you're going to be able to count on Jordan Poole game in and game out against this type of Boston defense. If you get Klay going from a physical standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, and from a size standpoint, he can be a big enough force that he can be that second guy they're going to need behind Curry. Because this is a unique situation with the Warriors in that normally we've seen the Warriors in these kinds of spots, and we've never worried about them finding sources to get enough points. Against this Boston defense, that's something that's going to be a constant worry for the Warriors.
Brian Getzeiler with us here, NBA radio analyst. Brian, if the Celtics take care of the basketball, how much more difficult does it get for Golden State?
A lot more difficult. Listen, 18 turnovers, 33 points off 18 turnovers last night. It gets a lot easier for it gets a lot harder for Golden State. The Celtics only scored 88 points last night. They shot themselves in the foot, and they did a lot of it in the third quarter. 11 turnovers in the first half. So if Boston takes care of the ball better, it makes it much harder for the Warriors because the Warriors, as I said earlier, they're not going to be scoring oodles of points against this Boston team. They're just far too good defensively. That's who they are. So to me, yes, for Boston, it becomes very simple. Take care of the basketball and let Tatum kind of hold the ball through possessions a little bit longer and have them bring more attention and bring more guys to him. To me, it's that simple. And for the Warriors here, listen, they guarded. They definitely did a very, very good job defensively last night. They have to maintain that strategy. But if Brown really gets it going with Tatum and they're taking care of the ball, it's going to be tough for the Warriors. But again, it's a discipline thing with Tatum and Brown and what they do in trying to dribble through crowds. It's something that they just both need to grow out of. And I don't know if they're going to grow out of it in time to win this series. That's what the Warriors may have going for them. But the turnover battle and what Boston does turning over the ball very well may be the single biggest determinant in who wins this series.
You got about a minute here, Brian. Tied up at 1-1. Who do you like and why?
I like Boston to win at home in Game 3. I think that the Celtics, listen, they've been very good on the road throughout these playoffs, but one stat you cannot ignore, they have not lost 2 in a row in this entire playoff. And I don't see any reason that they would lose 2 in a row here. They seem to correct things game over game very well, and I think you'll see them correct things very well here. Horford is not going to play as poorly as he did. Smart's not going to play as poorly as he did. Those guys, they're not going to play as well as they did in Game 1, but there's going to be some reversion to the mean off of Game 2 with them, and I think the Celtics will take care of the ball much better in their own building for Game 3. They seem to get fast and loose with the ball when they have a lead in the series. That's what's interesting. It becomes almost a mental thing, a comfort thing with them. So to me, I like the Celtics a lot in Game 3 to take a 2-1 lead in this series.
Thank you, Brian. Let's do this again soon. You're great. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Nick. My pleasure, buddy. Take care.
Thank you. There goes Brian Getzeiler from NBA Radio. He's an analyst with them. So he's confident in the Celtics winning Game 3 on Wednesday night. We'll obviously have to wait and see. I would tell you, if I were a betting man, I would lean towards the Celtics. Because as Brian said, they're 6-0 in the postseason after a loss. I just think, and I thought we'd see what we saw last night. I thought the Celtics would get outplayed. I said to Chris and JJ last week, I thought they might even get outclassed in Game 2. I had the Warriors winning game 2. I have the Warriors winning the series in 7. But I think on Wednesday night, could be totally wrong, but I think you'll see the best Celtics game of this series so far from first quarter through the fourth quarter. I think you'll see their best game from beginning to end in this series on Wednesday. But I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. Would not be the first time, my friend. NBA draft coverage brought to you by Power Business Technology. Visit them online at powercopiers.com. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone line is 1-800-920-1140. You can follow us on IG at Sports1140 KHTK. It's only getting uglier for this QB1 and his franchise. We'll talk about that coming up.
Out with the hot takes and in with the smart takes.
You're a smart guy. You're my favorite talk host here because you say it how it is.
It's the Nick Cattle Show on Sports 1140 KHTK.
So things are going to change the way sports is covered around here in Sacramento, huh? June 21st. Something's going to happen. You gotta wait. June 21st. Listen to KHTK.
Never let the party die.
That's right, baby. Some things going on. So high-profile lawyers, when you're a high-profile lawyer, one of the most crucial things that you have to do, you must do, is get the right message out, right? Like you are speaking for your client. Every time you're in front of a microphone, you've got to make sure you're on the same page. The message is the right message. Every time you're on a radio show, you got to make sure you say the right thing. Every time you're on TV, you got to make sure you say the right thing. You have to get your client's message out. You're not only protecting your client in the courtroom, but you're also protecting your client in the eyes of the public. PR is huge when you are, defending somebody who has a big name, a big bank account, etc. And so Rusty Hardin, who is the defense attorney for Deshaun Watson, he has a history with these big cases. Like usually when you have a high-profile case, whether it's the prosecutor or the defense, when you look at the defense, usually the person has had this history, right? Somebody who has defended big names because they know how much the public is going to talk about it. They know how much the case is going to be covered. They're supposed to know what you should say and not say in the public, in the sphere. And Rusty Hardin's a guy who has defended very popular people in the past. He defended athletes in the past. He defended Roger Clemens way back in the day. He's a guy who's been through this before. That's why when he was on Sports Radio 610 and said what he said, which we'll play for you in a second, I couldn't believe somebody of his experience level and for what he does for a living, I couldn't believe he would say what he said. What did he say? He said this.
I don't know how many men are out there now that have had a massage that perhaps occasionally there was a happy ending. All right? Maybe there's nobody in your listening audience that ever happened to. I do want to point out, if it has happened, it's not a crime. Okay? Unless you are paying somebody extra or so to give you some type of sexual activity, it's not a crime. And so at the end of the day, that's another thing that would affect conduct. Doing something or saying something or being a way that makes you uncomfortable is not a crime. And so we've had two grand juries find that, and nobody seems to want to listen.
Okay. So a lot of stuff there, right? A lot to unpack. Of course, as soon as people heard what Rusty Hardin said down in Houston, Sports Radio 610, they immediately said, what? That is a lawyer who was defending somebody who has 24th lawsuit was filed today, who has 24 sexual assault allegations filed with the civil court system in this country. Sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual encounters, and his lawyer goes on public radio. He goes on radio in one of the top markets in the country and says, well, I just want to remind everybody that happy endings are legal as long as you don't pay for them. Not a brilliant move by Rusty Hardin. And Rusty knew that it wasn't a brilliant move because quickly after he said this on Sports Radio 610, he then released a statement. And here's what his statement said. On a Houston radio show interview today, I mentioned that a massage that has a happy ending is not illegal, meaning it is not illegal for someone to have consensual sex with a therapist after a massage unless the sex is for pay. Deshaun did not pay anyone for sex. I was using the term hypothetically and not describing Deshaun's case. I have reiterated to others it's not okay to do anything that a woman does not agree to do. These women have alleged assault in their pleadings. I was speaking in a hypothetical situation. Of course, Tony Busby, who was representing all 24 women, he was going to have his thoughts on this. And he told John Barr of ESPN that Hardin, quote, may have single-handedly lost his client's case, because I'm absolutely going to use that comment because I think it speaks volumes to how he, his team, and his client think about the massage industry. If you're in the massage industry, according to Rusty Hardin, that's to be expected. And apparently that's what his client expected. I promise you that's not what any of these women expected. Now, Busby followed that with action. In this 24th lawsuit that was filed today, Busby included some of Hardin's comments and did exactly what he said he was going to do. He used it against Deshaun. He used it against Hardin. He used it against that entire team. That entire team. And I just, we've talked about this case and this situation on the Nick Cattle Show an awful lot. We talked about the 24th allegation earlier in the show. I just don't know why. Like, if you are Rusty Hardin, why you would ever go where he went. Why would you even entertain going to where he went? Why would that even be a part of the conversation? And if it was a hypothetical situation that was questioned or that you brought up yourself, why did you bring it up yourself? And if it was a question to you, why would you answer it? Not getting involved with that. Not getting involved with that. I'm here to talk about my client's case. My client did nothing wrong. Next question. Like, you are at full liberty. You don't have, a water pistol to your head. You don't have, you're not on the stand. You can answer anything you want to answer. You cannot answer anything you don't want to answer. Why would you ever entertain this? If you're for an experienced guy who's defended a lot of public figures, why would you do that? Why would you say what he said? It's asinine for his case. And it makes it feel like they're setting up to move the goalpost, doesn't it? Like, that's how I read it when I first saw it. Oh, so this might move. This might move from Deshaun did nothing wrong to Deshaun had consensual sex with those women, or Deshaun, it is what it is, and we know the business, and those women knew what was going on. It felt like an early attempt to move the goalposts of his defense. And if that's the case, I don't think that's going to fly at all. And I'll tell you, for an experienced law firm and an experienced lawyer, Watson's representation has completely dropped the ball with this. Whether you believe he's innocent or guilty, they have done a terrible job. The press conference was a disaster. The HBO Real Sports feature was a dumpster fire. Your attorney going on Houston Sports Talk Radio and saying what he said is a nightmare. And then the other part of this, by the way, which I would love to get to later on in the week, but we don't have a show for the rest of the week, literally. The A's kick us off. A big problem with all of this is the fact that Deshaun Watson paid one of these, massage therapists that actually owns the building, the owner of the business. He paid her $5,000. And there is texts and DM exchanges where she is helping set up some of these appointments. The problem is that he paid her $5,000. And she was asked about that recently, and she said, oh, it's just because he's a good guy. He cares about, black businesses. He wants to take care of small businesses. He wants to take care of black businesses. That's the kind of guy he is. He's just a good guy. He gave me $5,000 to help me with my business. Here's the problem. When that same person was in the deposition, she pled the fifth. Why would you plead the fifth? If Deshaun gave you 5 G's because he was being a great guy and trying to help your small business, why wouldn't you just say that during the deposition? So Deshaun Watson gave you $5,000. Is that correct? Yes. Why did he give you $5,000? Because he's a great guy. Because he took care of my small business. He has a heart of gold. He's a cherub. That's why he gave me $5,000. But instead, she said, I plead the fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. Why would you plead the fifth on it? If I was Rusty Hardin or any of these people that are trying to defend Deshaun Watson, you know what I would do? I'd shut my mouth. I would shut it down. I'd clamp up. I'd have a conference call with everybody. I'd have a Zoom, a Teams, whatever I got to do, and let every single one of them know we are not commenting anymore. We're handling this in the court system. We are no longer going on the radio. We're not going on HBO. We're not doing any of it. Somebody asks you something, no comment. Because they're a mess.
They could go back to it's under investigation, so we can't say anything about it.
There you go. Go back to that. Play dumb. Anything but what you've done. Like, any strategy aside from saying, yeah, he did it. That's really the only thing you could do worse with what they've done here.
It almost feels like they got Michael Scott to defend him.
It's
the more they talk, the more it gets worse.
It's nonsensical.
You're in a bad spot when you say, that's not what I meant to say.
That's not what I really meant. It was hypothetical, and I was talking about, hey, what if he did? You stepped in it immediately. You know it. The Splash Brothers have been the Splash Bro so far in the finals. We'll talk about it coming up.
Live and local.
Up front and opinionated.
It's the Nick Cattle Show right here on the King of Sacramento Sports Talk. Sports 1140 KHTK.
Saw Darvin Ham today talking about Russell Westbrook at the introductory press conference he had with the LA Lakers media. Lots of love, lots of verbal bouquets being thrown the way of Russell Westbrook. And the more that you read, and I'll get into the finals and the Splash Brothers in a minute, but the more that you read about this situation with Russ and the Lakers, the more it seems like he's going to stay. And I don't think it's because they want him to stay, frankly. I think they have no other choice.
He's a giant expiring contract.
Even though he is a giant expiring contract, thank you, Tim Bontemps, who happened to vote for Jimmy Butler as the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Sweet vote, Tim. They can't get rid of him. At least, let me rephrase that. They can't get rid of him unless they give something up with him. And they do not want to give anything up with him. They have like one first-round pick in the next 5 or 6 years. I believe it's 2027. Guys, you could look that up, see if I'm wrong. But I think the next pick that they could possibly trade is 2027. They traded all their other picks for Anthony Davis, and you can't go like back-to-back years without having picks. So the problem there is that if they were going to deal Westbrook, they have to attach a pick to him. And they don't want to attach a pick to him because they know they don't have many picks right now. Like, they're in trouble when it comes to future assets. So Darvin Ham talked him up. And I think everybody's going to talk him up. Everybody who is a part of the Lakers organization is going to talk up Russell Westbrook. They have no other option. What are you going to say? You're going to come out and say, oh, he's an awful fit? He stunk for us last year? Verlad tells me that 2026 is their next pick. That was close. Still 4 years away. They got a while. They got a while until they have a bullet in the chamber. So, yeah, I mean, they're stuck. All right, let's get to the finals. Again, we're off for the rest of the week. Oakland A's baseball the remainder of the week. I'm not excited about it. I love to do the show, so I would love to talk about the NBA Finals with you guys all week, but it is what it is. So let's just take a look forward to Game 3, shall we? I thought Steph, last night, he was good. I don't think he was great. He was good. The final stats are better probably than he was. He finished with 29, 6, and 4. But again, he wasn't incredibly efficient. He was 9 of 21 from the floor. He was, good from 3, 5 of 12. But he wasn't spectacular. That's good news for the Warriors because, Curry was not spectacular, and they still won running away from the Celtics last night. And I thought that, what you saw from Curry last night was freedom of movement. He was allowed freedom of movement. I thought the Warriors did a great job with the pick and rolls and the pick and pops and the dribble handoffs and all of those things that you can run on the perimeter with Curry. And I thought they did a much better job doing that. And they were more crisp. They were more physical. They were more physical with their screening. They moved an awful lot, so that happened. I've already commented on that enough, but Draymond Green set a couple of 100 moving screens last night. Egregious ones, not just moving screens, but egregious ones. And so, they got Curry open. They did what they had to do. They did what they had to do. And he knocked some shots down. In that third quarter, he got hot. Jordan Poole got hot. And, from that point, you just felt like, well, the Celtics are not going to have another fourth quarter like they had in Game 1. That's just nearly impossible. That was historic levels when you talk about a fourth quarter. They're not going to have that happen again. So the game was over by the end of the third. Here was Steph last night.
There's definitely a need for me to be aggressive throughout the game, to create, draw attention, get shots up, and just continue to apply pressure. Obviously, these first 2 games, it's gone well. I don't know what it'll look like on the road the rest of the series. It's just always about being confident with the ball in my hands and make plays.
I think he's always confident. The other thing I noticed was the Warriors went really small last night, like really small. And the Celtics looked like they wanted to stick to their guns with Horford and Rob Williams, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And one of the reasons why it did not work was I thought Robert Williams did not look healthy. I thought Ime Udoka should have taken him out earlier than he did in that game. I thought Williams was really struggling. There was one play in the game. He actually came up with a block shot, but he landed on his right leg. And so he jumped up to block the shot, and when he came down with intent, he landed on only his right leg. And he kept his left leg up in the air on purpose, which tells me he was really concerned about that left leg and that left knee. He was trying to not land on that leg and that foot. He's not healthy. So you had the freedom of movement. Golden State went really small. And the Celtics, look, 18 turnovers, that's game, set, match. So moving forward, what do you see? Well, I think the Celtics will try to ramp up the physicality in Game 3 and hope that the officiating allows them to do that. I think they will be much stronger against the screens. I think they will try to take the space away from Curry like they did in the fourth quarter in Game 1. I think they will try to not let Draymond Green dictate the force and the impact of the game all by himself. I think they have to, so to say, fight fire with fire. They've got to push back when Draymond pushes. Draymond wants to be physical. You got to be physical with him. You got to back him down. And you got to leave him alone offensively. Let him shoot because he stinks shooting the basketball. So I think the Celtics will try to take away that space with Curry. I think they'll fight through screens more. I would not be surprised if they went smaller, because when you go smaller, you have a better shot at chasing off of those screens and fighting through some of those screens. I would not be surprised if you see Grant Williams play more in this game and Derek White play a little bit more in this game, and the Celtics go smaller. And the big question, look, you got to take care of the basketball because that gives Golden State life. And I think the Celtics have to make sure that they keep this a half-court game. And the Warriors on the other side, they've got to continue to ramp up that ball pressure, continue to be physical, let Draymond be Draymond, cause turnovers, get out running, and score quick buckets. Because if you force the Celtics to turn the basketball over a bunch of times like they did last night, you are going to have those offensive outbursts, those explosions. And the Celtics will not be able to hang. It's why I picked the Warriors to win the series. Those lulls that the Celtics have, those turnovers that they have, and I know Golden State turns the ball over too, but when the Celtics turn the basketball over, Golden State going to eat them alive. So the Celtics have to take care of the basketball if they want to win. If they want to win Wednesday, if they want to win the series. Now, the other thing about Golden State, they need Klay Thompson to play better. If you're Golden State, you feel great, all things considered, that you're 1-1 right now because Klay has given you nothing. Splash Brothers been Splash Bro with just Curry, no Thompson. And, I think Klay has to be 75-80% of what he once was, unless the Celtics completely implode. I think Klay has to be, 80% Klay for the Warriors to win this series. And last night, 11-3-1. He was awful. He shot 4 of 19 from the field. He shot 1 of 8 from 3. He was terrible last night. And if Thompson continues to be terrible with this, and I know the Celtics have not been as good at home than they've been on the road, which is very strange. But if Klay struggles like this in Boston, I think it's going to be very difficult unless Wiggins pops, consistently pops, or Jordan Poole pops. And I know Jordan Poole played better last night, but I still think he's a defensive atrocity. So Klay's got to be better. I think it'll be very tough for the Warriors to win this series if Klay doesn't play better and if he doesn't shoot better. They need that consistent second guy. I don't expect the Celtics to play that awful all series long. If they do, then they do. They still have home court. Like I said, I think they win Game 3. We'll see how Game 3 looks before I start talking Game 4. Thanks to Chris. Thanks to JJ. Great job as always. We're off the rest of the week. A's baseball all the way through Friday. So I guess I'll talk to you next Monday. That's really strange Till then, be good, be safe, be healthy. Nick Cattle Show, Sports 1140 KHTK.